A brief history of mobile landmass. In this story, I will be your field guide through a series of geological encounters, exploring a brief history of new landmass to make sense of this place, a handmade landmass surrounded by an artificial lava flow. How do you find your way into a place? I've been asking myself that for months now, since the first time I came here. I've met a distant cousin of this potential terra firma, thousands of miles across the world, a lava flow that has been spilling into the ocean since 1984. No question, they are definitely related. New landmass, perpetually in motion, but the feeling is not at all alike. I have asked everyone I meet, what will be the resonance of this new place? What stories will get told about it? What is the lifespan of a landmass? Deep inside the new land will be 2 shipwrecks. The seafloor will be scooped up and heaved onto a new location. Birth of an island by regurgitation. Volcano House. Mark Twain's Letters from Hawaii. I suppose no man ever saw Niagara for the first time without feeling disappointed. I suppose no man ever saw it the 5th time without wondering how he ever could have been so blind and stupid as to find any excuse for disappointment in the first place. I suppose that any one of nature's most celebrated wonders will always look rather insignificant to a visitor at first, but on better acquaintance, will swell and stretch out and spread abroad until it finally grows clear beyond his grasp, becomes too stupendous for his comprehension. I know that a large house will seem to grow larger the longer one lives in it. And I also know that a woman who looks criminally homely at first glance will often so improve upon acquaintance as to become really beautiful before the month is out. A brief history of emergent landmass. Surtsey, the 46-year-old island. In Lapland, the river broke very early one year. The floods that came as a result were as bad as in 1981, when you had to get a boat down the main road, and Kopalo, where I was living, which was the village at the end of the road, became an island. Ideas, like landmass, perpetually shift, lay dormant, and erupt again. Known territories submerge. New landmass forms. In November 1963, off the southern coast of Iceland, the island of Surtsey broke through the surface of the sea from a break in the ocean floor. It is here, at the break, that the first membrane may have formed, distinguishing itself from the water above and the magma below. An air bubble, the potential origin of life. Surtsey is now a restricted site of special scientific interest. It is the only place in the world where it has been possible to chart, from the very first seed, the entire process of colonization. How life happens en route between magma and solid rock. February 14th, 1825. At 2 o'clock in the morning, while the sable mantle of night was yet spread over the mighty Pacific shrouding the neighboring islands from our view, our ears were suddenly assailed by a sound that could only be equaled by 10,000 thunders bursting upon the air at once. The heavens appeared to be one blaze of fire intermingled with millions of falling stars and meteors. At about 4:30 in the morning, the boiling contents of the tremendous cauldron had swelled to the brim and poured over the edge of the crater in a cataract of liquid fire. Under the mantle of dusk, I sat not 50 feet from the edge of the flowing lava, listening to the hellish crackle, hiss, and roar as it plunged into rolling seas amid billows of purplish red steam. June 5th, 2000. The Kavachi volcano has burst free after lying dormant for 9 years, exploding refrigerator-sized chunks of lava 70 meters into the air, creating its own lightning and giving birth to a new speck of land in the Pacific Ocean. Anak Krakatoa, the child of Krakatoa, began an undersea eruption in 1927. After 3 failed attempts to establish itself above the waves, Anak formed a small but permanent presence on August 11th, 1930. Home Reef is a mid-19th century ephemeral island. Metis Shoal eroded beneath the surface of the sea in 1781, 1967, 1979, and 1995. The Kuwait caldera is 500 years old. The submarine volcano of Karua has formed several ephemeral islands since it was first observed in 1897. Mayo Jinsho erupted in 1869, marking the appearance and disappearance of a small island. Loihi, the youngest volcano in Hawaii, is an undersea mountain rising more than 3,000 meters above the floor of the Pacific Ocean. It is still forming. I spent my 30th birthday with a volcano born the same year. To describe, in 2003, I turned 30. To mark this event, I visited the Eldfell volcano on the Icelandic island of Heimaey, celebrating our simultaneous appearance in 1973. As it turns out, the Center for Short-Lived Phenomena from the Smithsonian were on site to record the eruption from close to its first moment. It is not often that you can share your age with a landmass. Here, in this place, you could keep a record of all infants born during its formation to inform them at a later date of their shared birth with this new landmass. A list of artificial islands. Ellis Island, or the Island of Tears. The entrance to the New World was originally only 3 acres wide. It was enlarged into a 27-acre island to make space for all the mobile lives which were about to pass through. The landfill for the site was obtained from ship ballast and possibly excess earth from the construction of the New York City subway system. My great-grandfather, Isaac Harry Halperin, who, in the Jewish tradition of passing along initials, IHH, I was named after, is known to have landed on the Island of Tears at least twice, maybe 3 times. His wife Eva followed him across the ocean in 1924. I wondered if by some serendipitous reenactment of personal history, he left for New York on the Holland-America line. But in fact, he came on the Aquitania from Southampton, which was built in Clydebank, not 2 miles from my house in Glasgow. The Venetian Islands, in short, a real estate scheme that sold underwater plots for islands that did not yet exist in Florida. The Palm Jumeirah, based on a tree which was first found in the fossil record around 80 million years ago. This branching landmass is composed of 100 million cubic meters of sand and 7 million tons of crushed rock. Enough material to build a 2-meter wall circling the globe 3 times. So much lava comes out of the Kilauea volcano that a road could be paved to the moon and back again 5 times every single day. The low-lying lands, the Republic of Minerva off the coast of Tonga, the Republic of Rose Island off the Italian coast. This place began forming as an island in 2008 and will continue to establish itself as a peninsula until 2013. In Scotland and Ireland, they built forts called crannogs. They drove wooden piles into lake beds and made huge rock piles in the middle of lakes to form land. Nan Madol in Micronesia was created by piling coral, rubble, and stone boulders on coral reefs. The Aztecs constructed Tenochtitlan on piles of canes covered by dirt and held in place by stakes. But the floating islands of Lake Titicaca are unique. The Uros still live on their woven landmass, carefully made from reeds that grow naturally in the water. A last mention, seasteading. Traveling islands of the future which will move around the oceans at a far faster pace than the ultimate floating islands, tectonic plates, drifting around the Earth's crust at the same rate as your fingernails grow. In Glasgow, a new series of skyscrapers have been built all along the Clyde. They are built to last 25 years and will not outlive most of the mortgages that helped to construct them. What becomes of these new islands when their founding function becomes obsolete? Do they sink back into the water when we no longer need them? When economies collapse and shipping containers become stationary? What happens to a landmass of economy? Ferdinandia. In 1831, the island of Ferdinandia appeared off the southern coast of Sicily, sparking an international dispute over territorial ownership of this strategically positioned heap of young geology. Before any serious conflicts developed, the island disappeared, crumbling back into the sea. Captain Graham, who had first taken note of the island from the deck of his ship the Courier, claimed the emergent territory for the Empire by raising a flag. Upon discovery of the island, he sent his crew armed with a pail to collect an assortment of geological samples as proof of discovery. The Bourbon Kingdom of the Two Sicilies planted a flag and named the island Ferdinandia after King Ferdinand II. The French Derussat hoisted a flag on the taller part of the island, to which he gave the name of Julia, remembering the apparition of the island came in the month of July. He likened the recent eruption to a freshly uncorked bottle of champagne. In the end, the island had a total of 7 names: Schiaccia, Nertita, Corajo, Hotham, Julia, Graham, and Ferdinandia. Captain Graham's pail of rocks and soil stand as only one of 2 samples ever taken from Ferdinandia. This collection of young geology is currently housed in a small rectangular box in the storage of the Natural History Museum in London. At the time the island initially eroded, to avoid embarrassment, it was proclaimed that Britain was the only nation to have an entire island in a pail. Not long ago, I had the opportunity to view Ferdinandia under a microscope at the Hunterian Museum in Glasgow. The only other mineral samples that remain of this island were being housed between two glass slides, a 15-minute walk from my apartment. To look at an atomic level, at an island that no longer exists. Geological Field Guides, Part 1. Karen. As we stood on Garibaldi Hill and I took photos, Sonny traced with his finger the path from his school through town to his best friend's house where he would go every afternoon. The friend was a son of the teacher at the U.S. medical school that used to exist on a promontory overlooking Plymouth before the eruption. The school moved to another island, and he has not seen his friend since. He says that he regularly dreams that the eruption never happened. In the dreams, he is walking through Plymouth again after being let out of school. Each time, he stops at different shops or sees different people he used to know but whom are all gone from the island and never likely to return. They have moved to the UK or to other islands and established lives there. He said that sometimes he thinks that he only dreamt that Plymouth doesn't exist anymore, and that he would not be surprised to come down Garibaldi Hill and see it like it used to be and realize that it was all a dream, that it was destroyed. I told him it was the same in New York City with the Twin Towers, and that I still remember them so clearly and vividly that I don't really believe they aren't there. In my mind, they are there. He shook his head with appreciation and said it was exactly the same. Sonny took us to the Belém riverbed to show us the lahar flows that had inundated the original bed and buried the original bridge under many meters of mud and rock. We walked through houses filled with the lahar flow. They were clogged with mud, tree trunks, and large stones, and we were forced to crawl through windows to enter them and crouch under the ceilings. The dust-covered shelves and furniture provided an eerie sense of human occupation that was steadily slipping away and being buried. At the same time, though, there was an antipodal sense that the human presence was stubborn and not going anywhere. This was especially the case when I saw things I would think should not survive the mud and rains and passage of time. Phone books, catalogs, and magazines, all dated to 1995, sat dustily on shelves, but didn't seem worse for wear. A 5.25-inch floppy disk sat, holding data that likely couldn't be read anymore. My mind wandered to what the owners thought as they walked through their homes for the first time after the lahar surged through the spaces. Did they bother to walk through them again after that, or did they take what they chose to salvage and then abandon the houses to curious visitors like myself? Would they feel intruded upon by my exploration, voyeuristic, hunched over to avoid hitting the ceiling, through the place where they acted out the routine of their lives before everything changed? Why did they choose to take some things but leave others? Curtains in pristine condition were left hanging in windows. Sets of china set in cupboards. Furniture that could have been reused was not. Year after year, the houses fill with more mud as new lahars are released in rainy seasons. In a year, the furniture I saw may not be visible anymore. Future visitors will have to crouch even lower under the ceilings until they, too, are covered. Part 2. Hugh's Dreams. I am climbing one of the mountains with a group of other geologists. possibly in the future. The vegetation is very different from today, much lusher with more flowers and even small trees. We are looking for something, but I am not sure what. We begin to fly over the hillside like birds, watching the rocks and flowers rush past us. Pieces of lava leap into the air and then hover carefully next to us, rotating slowly to display their features. The lava has all broken and then stuck back together again, and I have a glow of happiness when I recognize these familiar textures. I hear a rumbling noise and open the porch of my tent to see what is happening. To the west, where the volcano must be, a huge brown eruption cloud is slowly expanding and rising to a great height. As soon as I can see the cloud, it is completely silent. I shout to Jackie to wake up as the volcano is erupting, but she doesn't believe me and goes back to sleep. This is because I've been waking Jackie up every morning by throwing ash against her tent and pretending that an eruption is underway. Perhaps I've cried wolf too many times. This is a feeling that is hard to express. I sit on the edge of the crater just before midnight as the sun sets. The red color of the crater wall gives way to brilliant green at its base, where a small, moss-lined stream meanders far beneath me. The air in the vast silent bowl of the crater seems so thick that I can slowly float out to its center and feel the weight of the air beneath me, which seems to be sucking me inwards, towards its heavy hollowness. Part 3. Field Diary. Last night, I woke up in the middle of the night in a panic. We are so far away. Surrounded by water in every direction, there are no shortcuts to get home. Antarctica is closer to other landmass than we are. We are next to an erupting volcano. We are sleeping in a place 7 miles from the point where lava enters the ocean. The current eruption has been going since 1984. The perpetual creation of new landmass. In the afternoon, we went for a drive down towards the water for the first time. We wanted to see what happened when we hit the end of the land. To our right, in the distance, 2 huge plumes of smoke came up from the ground into the sky. Volcanic plumes, where lava goes into the ocean. Pitch-black lava fields, and as soon as you step onto the flows, the burnt-out cast of a fruit. Dappled, pock-marked into the ground, a 3/4 globe, the opposite of Pompeii. No positive cast, only negative space, like the Hiroshima shadows on the walls. Absence of the body, only the after image etched onto a surface. This is a natural, horizontal architecture, a melon scooped out from the earth. We drove out onto the red road today to a town that was completely covered by lava in 1960. Lava 2 years older than Allison. We went to the new beach, which formed in 1993. Houses are surrounded by lava. The best black sand surfing beach was lost under 70 feet of molten rock. The only thing that didn't burn in the flows was the lighthouse. They say the volcano goddess Pele came to the lighthouse keeper one night and he offered her dinner. She saved the lighthouse for the kindness she was shown. Like the ravens in Iceland who saved the girl from the landslide for her kindness to them through the winter. Like the church of Parakutin, spared by the lava, moved on purpose when the molten sea froze. like the lighthouse in the Azores. Lava surrounded everything else, but the tower was spared. Spared, but defunct, as the lava extended the landmass so far out into the sea that the lighthouse lost its function. No longer at the rock edge, where earth meets water, it could not alert sailors to sharp danger when they were coming home to land. The lighthouse here, the tallest in the country, will also soon be defunct, as the land extends and extends out into the sea. We are on an island so young that dinosaurs never lived here because they were already extinct by the time the land arrived. We drove back up to the summit of the volcano. We stopped at Devastation Trail, which got all the outlying ash from the 1959 eruption. It stripped the trees bare, so they look like skeletons. They look like bare-boned skeletons, and around them are flowers that are bright pink, like soft puff flowers or balls of fluff. And the leaves are brilliant red, so it looks like cascading lava foliage all around, which is colonizing this new area, a black ash cone. When we were on our way down Chain of Craters Road, we stopped at this huge, expansive lava flow that goes out for miles in every direction. The trail extends for 16 miles down to the coast to an area that receives frequent seismic tsunamis. So easy to be swept out to sea. When we were out on the flow, these flows are really amazing in that they look like they were just frozen in mid-action. It's like poured taffy or custard, like tongues of liquid that have been poured one on top of another. As we were walking out onto the flow, actually, it was quite frightening. These flows formed in 1985 in the same eruption that literally cut off the end of the road. The lava flow that passed over it was 9 miles wide, and as a result, you literally reach the end of the road. You can't drive any further because the lava has covered everything. So it's not a figure of speech. But it was frightening because you really have the feeling that the lava is an organism as opposed to geology. The way the crust forms over these tubular flows is almost like reptilian skin. And then it is like a mosaic because it is broken in such an even pattern. Where it is completely smooth, it looks like starfish tentacles or a little bit like the roots of the fossil grove in Glasgow. All those drowned, petrified tree stumps, which, again, are almost like an animated geology or an organism geology. There is a section that looks like a series of close-ups from traditional Renaissance paintings, with heavy Italianate red velvet drapery, and, in fact, it is not drapery at all, but sheets of lava that have folded in on themselves. There are sections of braided lava, long and ornate like a majestic set of cornrows for the volcano. In my dreams, I've gone walking in the fields of ropey lava, searching for sticky buns, syrup thick, and pouring over tightly spun ropes of cinnamon bread, a specialty of the island and very apt, as the ground is an extended field of molten taffy wound around itself. Lava and bun, quite like each other. In the visitor center hangs a famous painting of Pele, her hair in long, twisting coils which descend into rivers of lava surrounding her feet, becoming channels of molten rock. There are other sections that look like the most intricate braided ropes used aboard ancient fishing vessels, woven to catch one fish or another depending on the kind of knot. And it is the same thing, so delicate. The patterns of these ropes of lava look hand-spun. So it's very hard to believe that it was just made through a naturally occurring process. A brief history of this place. Water into earth. Unlike the land, where not much changes, at least not in our country, only if we do something, the sea is different. The sea changes constantly. But it's only the top layer that gets reworked. In some places it's thick. In some places you get sand waves. There are big underwater sand dunes, hundreds of meters long and a couple of meters high. They walk along the sea floor. The sediment is kept in motion and it is very young. This peat was formed because of the drowning of the area by the rising North Sea. What can be learned from the archives stored in the sand and the peat and the clay? Preserved in the seabed or in the coastal sediment? There are all kinds of traces hidden in it, like storms, storm surges, low sea levels, places where people lived and worked. But we start from the sand and the clay, the peat, the mud. The nice thing is you can see their drowning history because you can see the peat, it encroaches onto it, and then you see the little dunes are drowning slowly. So those are the small discoveries that we're making. Several thousand years ago, there wasn't really a well-developed natural harbor here. You can see the rise and fall of harbor towns depending on what the rivers did. Farther south, you find nice cities with beautiful churches without steeples. Because by the time they were ready to put up the steeple, the river had moved on. At a certain point, the river system started to exit here. It happened at the right time in history for this city. Had it happened 500 years earlier or later, we would not have been the major port. It can also be the other way around. Land can disappear very quickly. You would have a small village at the coast, there would be a storm, and the coast would crumble. Even looking at a very small part of the North Sea floor already shows that the landscape was very varied. Rivers ran through it, there were hills. It's hard to imagine, but the old rivers that were there before it was the sea are still there. Embedded in the seafloor are traces of ancient riverbeds. Only last week, they presented a Neanderthal skull they found in the water. He was here. Now we are here. The sea was here, and now it has changed into land. Later, it may become water again. We know people lived here when it was land and not sea, after the last ice age. Digging down, there must have been an extreme number of mammoth roaming about the seabed when it was dry land. We always think of Siberia as being the place where the mammoth lived. But there were many more here. It's just that we do not have them frozen, as if only sleeping, suspended in ice. Where I used to live, people would be working in the fields and find stones that had come from very far away, transported by crawling glaciers during the Ice Age. Fishermen used the stones to make their nets heavier. I remember farmers would also find them in their fields, paint them white, and put them in the garden. And probably, if you look around, you will still find them in the area. People living here still call this area the sea. But it's a shallow lake. It's nothing. But especially older people Even people my age, because they know, they call it the sea. This inland lake is still called the sea from when it was an ocean. The Rotterdam Lava. Dear Hugh, I have tried as faithfully as possible to observe our surroundings as if my eyes and hands were yours. As you know, I am much of a novice on these molten matters and hope my humble geologic attempts will suffice under the circumstances. We have undertaken field observations both on land and at sea. One fine afternoon was spent on the now still flow itself, from which you will find my direct descriptions on the basis of your pointed questions as to the nature of this place. It was completely unexpected that I would also find myself at sea aboard a small vessel encircling the emerging islands from close range. Here, we had no chance to sample water temperature, collect specimens, or disembark on the new landmass, much as I had hoped otherwise, as our captain was quite adamant that clear and present dangers lurked in every direction above and below water. So you will have to rely on my photographic evidence when I proclaim, "There is new land here." Of course, Captain Graham's follies come to mind, so we will not dare to claim this newborn place, only to take inspiration from the notion that there are still areas on this mad earth that are as of yet untouched, open land, a place of potential. As Mark Twain would say, here is room for the imagination to work. And so I leave it to you to reconstruct how we came to find this place. What has happened here? I have enclosed all requested samples as closely intact as possible, including some obsidian shards, a pink and green conglomerate, a standard flow, and contact with country rock. I imagine you are by now closing in on the Arctic Circle, at least more near to it than I. I do remember those waters. Swirling steam, ice in the distance, warm in one direction and cool in another. To think, glaciers calving by rivers of fire. We shall hope that for the meantime, both elements continue their sleep so that you may carry out your dedicated work in peace and safety. As I recall, you made mention that your family would join you on this wonderful obsidian expedition. My best to them all, and yours faithfully from our present position in Northview. Miss I. Hope H. Field Notes. A general description of the area. The outer edge of a land-based continent. Lava flow found at place where land meets sea body. About 2 to 4 miles away from lava flow, signs of large-scale event-based activity. 2 constant billowing plumes of smoke emit vertical clouds into the air. This activity has not stopped even for one moment while we have been here. The amount of smoke is uniform, continuous, never-ending inferno. No signs of active flow at water's edge. In the distance, out in the water, columns of smoke, black ash, and mud are being spewed into the air. New land is forming. At the top of the flow, the surface consistency remains smooth, low-relief ropes. Not very ornate in braided pattern. Gentle slopes and ropes Like making gelato in a plastic bag and when it is half frozen, squishing it and pressing down into the substance so that small, angular valleys form. As we move downslope, longer vertical braids which suddenly turn in on themselves and go horizontal when they meet an obstacle. Flow entirely covers and submerges boulders after this point. As we head to edge of flow, there is much more erratic action. Ropes moving in every direction and whirlpools and figure eights. Mini waterfalls, frozen mid-action, form between boulders covered on the lower slopes. There are traces of human activity, rusted metal bottle tops, tire tracks, footprints. The flow picked up small bits of debris along the way. Nothing huge or heavy. It was not strong or thick enough to move mountains or even boulders. The flow cooled slowly as material of a lower temperature to lava did not incinerate on contact. Glass found in the flow was not melted or even deformed, but outer edges of the object sunk below the high tide lava mark. The formation of a chilled crust may have been an important part of this, as it may insulate objects on surface such as glass or feet from the very high temperatures in the center of the lava. It reminds me of a story from the volcanic island of Montserrat in the Caribbean, that iguanas would walk onto warm pyroclastic flow deposits after rain, being attracted by the heat, but would invariably be found cooked the next day. Rainfall can cool the surface of hot rocks or lava, but once the water dries off the surface, can rapidly become far hotter. Yellow lichen has begun to form on some rocks. There are not many signs of colonization, so the event cannot have happened too long ago. Either that, or the wind is so strong that it has blown away all signs of new life. A preliminary study of textures in the Rotterdam lava samples by Dr. Hugh Tuffin. Many thanks for sending me these wonderful samples. They are quite fascinating and unlike any lava I have ever seen. I've looked at them in some detail with my magnifying glass and have also taken a lot of close-up photographs. In this section, I'll report to you some of the things I have discovered through this study and provide some tentative interpretations of what I think might have happened in Rotterdam. When I looked inside these fractures, I got a glimpse of a shinier, darker lava within. The exquisite folding on the top surface of the lava suggests that it oozed and flowed in a very similar way to Pahoehoe lava. Given the extreme thinness of the lava, its viscosity was probably very low, far lower than most known lava flows, so that the rate of lava advance was probably rapid, possibly advancing many meters in only a few minutes. An analysis of field photographs. Firstly, this scene strongly reminds me of Krafla volcano in the north of Iceland and its geothermal power station with the juxtaposition of young lava flows, modern industrial buildings, and billowing vents of steam. Then, I also noticed the mound of lava on the left-hand side and the rocks protruding from it. The low aspect ratio of this flat, pancake-like mound is striking. If I am correct to assume that the mound primarily consists of lava, Then the shallowness of its slopes, which looks to be even gentler than the Hawaiian Shield volcanoes, is another good line of evidence for an extremely fluid, mobile lava. Here, we have the location of lava sample 1, whose shape is unmistakable after the hours I have spent inspecting it. It is most informative. Some of your field notes suggest that multiple pulses of lava effusion took place. So thank you for providing me with my own evidence for this. A fascinating photograph. It appears to show a high tide mark of lava, which is plastered onto two sides of the large conglomerate boulder. With some calculations and a number of assumptions about conservation of energy, I can estimate the velocity of the flow and arrive at a value of at least 7.7 miles per hour. If this result is robust, it suggests that the lava was advancing extremely rapidly. I estimate the viscosity of the lava is comparable to castor oil and significantly thicker than olive oil. In this image, am I right to suspect that this is part of a footprint on the lava surface? This is extraordinary and reminiscent of the 345,000-year-old devil's footprints in volcanic ash at Roccamonfina volcano in Italy, the earliest known human footprints. It is clear that the footprint postdates the folding and fracturing on the lava surface, as one would expect, or else the shoe may have melted and would have certainly sunk right through the flow if it had not significantly cooled. I guess that the lava must still have been very hot, however, which raises the tantalizing possibility that some people may have witnessed the eruption. I wonder whether there is any verbal or written record of what they witnessed. End notes. What is landmass? We are used to thinking of land versus water. We know our far, far ancestors came out of the water to live on land. And whereas sea, in fact, is land with a small layer of water on top of it. So it's the level of the water which actually defines land, not the land itself. But really, there's land anywhere, everywhere. Where did the material come from to make this landmass? Imagine a building that is 17 stories high. To make this place, they will dig a hole into the seafloor that is 17 stories high in reverse. A skyscraper reaching into the center of the earth instead of the direction of the moon. 605 million cubic meters of sand will first become an island and then a peninsula. This is an island in its infancy. Before the time it became an island of economy, there were seals, gulls, all colonizing. In Hawaii, a new species arrived once every 30,000 years. So remote that each life form took millennia to evolve and survive on that black jut of lava. On this landmass, within days of its formation, the island was in use. Here, it is normal to have a place that is sea become a place that is land, and then become sea again. Not far from here, they found 400 shipwrecks on land. 2 shipwrecks were discovered in this area, One will be removed, and one will stay, embedded deep inside the new land. In Iceland, when houses become engulfed in lava, they place grave markers on top of the flow to let you know what or who is buried underneath. 1953 was the last major flood here. Almost 2,000 people died. Here, everyone thinks they are completely safe, and most people wouldn't think twice about why a beach is much wider from one year to another. They have no idea. We've always fought the sea. Now, we have the small island. In August, we will have the whole strip, and in November, it will be attached to the existing land. From a human point of view, it's already very fast, but geologically, it's a wink of the eye. Myself, I notice that every time I see the weatherman on the news explaining what the weather will be tomorrow, I look at the map and think, one day he will have to add an area onto it. When will they change the map? To me, that is the moment when people realize or accept that this new place exists. When it appears on the 8 o'clock news, in the weather report. How do you think about an overnight landmass? They're cousins of this place. The ephemeral islands that form out of water from a submarine basin instead of a sand pipe. Apparently, asphalt is the perfect analog for imagining molten lava. Not long ago, I spent some time with a group of volcanologists who spoke about past continents as well as continents of the future. I asked them whether it is possible to sense geological time, deep time, through lived experience. They mentioned that humans are potentially the most powerful geomorphological agents altering the surface of the Earth today. Before we were here, it was the Ice Age, retreating glaciers, unexpected meteors, volcanoes transforming life on Earth, as well as the color of the sunset. Days will be organized for people to go and sift through the sand, looking for mammoth bones, teeth, implements, artifacts. Can you think about a place like a boat? A shipwreck is a time capsule of one moment. The inventory of each ship is kept together to retain a snapshot of that increment in time. Here, we have a vertical column of shelves. On the top, ceramic bowls, a skull. Next, below, silver, the spine, vertebrae by vertebrae. Underneath, herringbones opened in the same way they are eaten today. The stomach, the liver, the gut. Belt buckles, the hip bone, shoe leather, the feet. The boat as a body. The shipwreck as a skeleton broken up, organ by organ. A museum of seaward anatomy. If one were to take a course section of this place in 500, 1,000 years, what would the future fossil records say? There will be stories of this emergent landmass made of sand, peppered with early asphalt lava flows and industrial volcanoes that you can listen to as you wander over the new sediment directly underfoot.